tooth. She was an angel, she was a ghost, she was the one that I loved the most. I gave her my best, she gave me her worst. She was a blessing and she was a curse. Do we say goodbye under London skies? On the streets we walked when love was new in our eyes. He gave her his heart, she wanted his soul. There was so much they couldn't control, but he can still see her sitting there, blue eyes and strawberry hair. Do we say goodbye under London skies? On the streets they walked when love was new in their eyes. He learned from birds, she learned from books. He lied with words, she stole with looks. But when they sang together, it all rang true. Remember those days before love was done with you. Do we say goodbye under London skies? On the streets we walked when love was new in our Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Noel Casler podcast, episode 112. Indulging me once again in a little music. That was an older song. You responded kindly last time, so I took the liberty. I kind of remembered part of that. I wrote that when I was on a Crosby, Stills and Nash tour, and they made me go to this dinner that Stills was invited to with kind of royals, and it was in a private home, and there wasn't a place at me at the dinner, so I had to stay upstairs. Like the living quarter area was upstairs, and I didn't mind that at all. I didn't want to be at the dinner, but the guy had a beautiful old Martin guitar, and I picked it up and played it, and that song came out, and I recorded it on my iPhone, and that was probably 2015 or so. So I played it for you. And now I'll shut up and start talking about politics. I hope everybody's staying cool. We're in a heat wave here in the East Coast, Northeast, Hudson Valley. Big swaths of the country are feeling it. I know it's hot, so figured I would do a podcast, try to catch up with you guys. Maybe give you some distraction if you're sitting inside and don't know what to do. I've been sitting outside myself, it's cooler outside, so I had to come in and shut the windows and do this. And there's a lot I want to talk about. I watched John Oliver's show, and he did a good takedown of Project 2025 and explaining what it's all about. And I think that's a very valuable thing. We've obviously talked about it on this show, and a lot of people are talking about it. And it's perhaps the thing that we need to really focus on as Democrats or as citizens, because what they're trying to do would be the end of life as we know it in this country. It doesn't mean everybody would die overnight. That's not what I'm saying. But our government would stop functioning, and it would cease functioning as something representative of the people, right? Where we elect people, they pass laws, and then those laws are, turned into the policy that our institutions carry out, right? And part of the reason that happens is the people who work in those, the civil servants, the guys who spend their lives becoming experts at one particular thing or another, are not political. They stay when when a new administration comes in, they hire a couple thousand employees of their own that are trying to enact the policy of the president. And then there's all these civic, they're called like Section F or something, employees that stay no matter what, because they're experts at what they're doing. And those are the people I grew up around. My uncle worked for the USDA in Beltsville, Maryland forever. It seemed all their friends, my friends' parents. When you grew up, I lived in the DC area till I was 13, and I moved back at 18, and when you spend time in DMV, you understand that like people's parents are experts on like this one specific thing. A guy can spend his life studying chicken clitorises or something, to help our food supply and agriculture. I'm using an extreme example, but it's wonkish stuff that we pay for, and it helps keep things running. When you take that away and you offer policy up to special interests, as Trump most certainly would do, you have, big agricultural conglomerates and oil and gas industry and all these guys saying, don't do that. This is what we want to do with this particular policy. And that's what you see in Project 2025. They'll dismantle BLM, Bureau of Land Management. They'll hand over, the keys to the hen house to the foxes, essentially. And we can't do that. That's the reason we have policies, because that stuff was like that in the beginning and everything got corrupted, and we're trying to prevent that now. That's where labor unions came in. That's where representative democracy comes in, right? Because we vote for people that are going to do things based on the greater good, not a special interest who donated money to your campaign or helped keep you out of jail in Trump's case. And that's what we're up against. And I don't think people realize how that would affect their daily lives. If they take away, the big ticket items, your Social Security, your Medicare, things that you paid into your whole life, they're not somebody else's to give away. That's your money. That's your right as a citizen. You should have better medical care than Medicare. Medicare is actually good, but everybody should be getting health care all along. But at the very least, when you're an older American, you shouldn't have to worry about that. That's the kind of stuff we enacted as a nation to make sure people didn't fall below a certain line. Because we already know super rich people and corporations don't care about individuals. And now we have a political party that clearly doesn't care about any individual other than Donald Trump, right? That's their guy. I haven't done a podcast since he got found guilty. Hallelujah. I've written about it a lot, on Twitter and my Substack. But, he got found guilty. And what did the GOP do right away? They went to DEFCON 4. They just started attacking the judiciary, attacking the jurors, the judge, his gag order, all this kind of stuff. Speaker Johnson is trying to get it overturned. He's trying to use the powers of the Congress to intimidate, a Manhattan DA. He doesn't even have anything to do with federal law. It's a state case, but they're trying to drag him down in front of Congress and make an example out of him, like they did to Fani Willis. She didn't get dragged up to Congress yet, but she got attacked in her home district in Georgia. And that's That ties in with the Project 2025 stuff. It's the same sort of thing. Anything that could potentially hurt Donald Trump or hold him accountable is going to be removed from the infrastructure of our government. Our government is going to be rearranged so it serves one man and his interests, and then his family's interests, and people who curry favor with him will be protected, and everybody else will be vulnerable. They'll use the judiciary, it's too hot to talk, as a weapon. As we see with Hunter Biden, who was found guilty for something that, other people wouldn't have been found guilty of. The little, pissant teenager who killed a couple people didn't run afoul of MAGA, right? He killed people with a gun. That's a weapons infraction as far as I'm concerned. He traveled across state lines and murdered 2 people with his automatic weapon, and they turned him into a hero, and they drag him out in front of their CPAC rallies and all this stuff, and he goes on speaking tours, and he's a moron. He's a teenager. He didn't even graduate high school. He was somebody who grew up in this kind of ignorance, which is now becoming generational. There's guys that are voting in this election that were 10 when Trump ran, and they've heard all this mythology about Trump in their communities and in their households that have been poisoned by Fox News and the giant arm of Murdoch and the Koch brothers funding all these, the Federalist Society. We're talking about Project 2025, Heritage Foundation, all these conservative think tanks that manipulate these white Christian Americans, many of them middle and working class, right? Those are the people Trump's focusing on because they're the easiest ones in his mind to manipulate. And it's proven true politically because they're not getting the truth, and they're getting amped up on right-wing podcasts and, the sort of xenophobia and racism that has been endemic in their culture for centuries, really, that we don't talk about. Today's Juneteenth. How many white people do you think are snickering about that in the Deep South today, that don't fully realize the debt they owe their African-American brothers and sisters who built this country and are still fighting for equality, right? It's cheaper and easier as a politician to manipulate that ignorance and that bile in behalf of your own power than it is to address these issues. And that's why they attack progressivism. That's why they attack civil rights, LGBTQ communities, anything they see as vulnerable and not serving the mediocre white man. That's what they go after. And they're going to be enabled in that by law enforcement, right? And they're going to be enabled in that by the bureaucracy this time if they can dismantle it. Last time, Trump didn't know what he was doing, right? Jared didn't know he had to hire his own people. He thought the staff just kind of like held over. Obama's staffers were just going to all be there for Trump's people. They were novices. Trump didn't think he was getting elected. It was a scam, basically, to launch his own media company. He liked the press and privilege. He didn't think he was really going to get elected. That's why if you look at election night, he's terrified. The look on his face is like, oh my God, what have I done now? Because if anyone knows how many skeletons they have, it's him. And I'm sure he knew, Jared and the Russians were doing their best to get him elected, but I don't think he really realized how well it would work. And it did. Because they use that same machine I just described to manipulate voters. Jared figured out how to micro-target people, right, from his buddies in Palo Alto, his buds at Facebook that he'd gone to Harvard with. He said, how do I get this specific demographic of voters? How do I find their social media information? This is what Cambridge Analytica and all this stuff was about. They basically were like, how do I find guys in Michigan who worked union jobs and voted for Obama, but also own a gun and a Kid Rock CD? They knew the cultural totems to sort of search out in people's social media databases to find who might be vulnerable to their message. They took that data and they handed it over to the Russians, who inundated these guys with false information and said, Hillary's running a sex ring. They knew the psychological wounds to exploit in many women voters. Suburban women put Trump in office the first time. People don't like to admit that now, but that's how it happened. So they knew misogyny, even when it's, even in a sort of patriarchal framework, can work in their favor, if that makes any sense. It was shocking to me how many women were distrustful of another woman who was highly accomplished and deserved to have a job, right? But she'd been an enemy to the right for 30 years. Why? Because she tried to set up health care. When Bill Clinton got elected, and I lived in D.C. at the time, that was the first, campaign I voted in. I went to events. My friends were all doing the inaugurations and stuff. But, she was an accomplished woman. She's like, I'm not a housewife. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but she's like, if I'm in D.C., I might as well do something useful. Let me work on healthcare. And that infuriated these think tanks on the right. Why? Because they don't want people to have healthcare. They want you to be poor and broken and have that sort of power over you. So you're going to have to take a job in which they can exploit you, or stay in that job so you can get health insurance for your family that might include a sick child because he was poisoned in the community that's being poisoned by the very plant their old man is working in. Do you follow me? Do you see how those economic prisons can hold people in? And where are those refineries and factories? They're not on Nantucket. They're not where the Koch brothers are living. They're not on Fifth Avenue. They're in these red states mostly, and purple states and blue states. So they knew if we go after, Hillary Clinton and the misogyny of like what gives her the right to try and introduce health care, we can sort of exploit the rifts that already exist, through lack of opportunity and ignorance in those communities. And we'll teach people to hate Hillary Clinton. And they did. People hated Hillary all along. Like they hate Kamala now, which is inexplicable to me. But people are like, I can't stand Kamala. Even Democrats say that to me. Why? She's smart. She's beautiful. She's accomplished. She knows what she's doing. I see no problem there. But even Democrats don't like her. And it's the same kind of thing. It's conditioning. Right? The conditioning you do to a people determines the outcomes of elections. And the Republicans realized that early on. We can manipulate the hell out of these people. That's what Murdoch saw. That's why he went after the NASCAR demographic with Fox News, the NFL football fans and stuff that weren't being served by sort of traditional media, which was fact-based, old school New York Times, Washington Post, the firing line. Conservative politics were much different than what was ushered in the age of Limbaugh and, Hannity and Combs. If anyone remembers Alan Combs, he was my old neighbor downtown. Even Fox News was different to what it is now, because now it's this craziness and insanity that sells. The Alex Joneses, the Ted Cruz, who's basically a podcast host. And now it's all on steroids. Now you got Elon Musk manipulating the whole thing, determining who gets, traction on his website. He took down a bunch of emails that somebody found, or a bunch of letters that were like information from Ted Cruz's donors, who he was taking money from and calls. And he apparently left his file somewhere on Capitol Hill and somebody published it on Twitter. And Elon Musk removed the tweets. He doesn't do that for anybody else. He doesn't do that to, Rupert Murdoch, who had 2 videos in recent days of manipulated imagery of Biden as if he's just wandering off in Italy when he was looking at paratroopers, and the wider shot shows he's clearly walking over to give a thumbs up to somebody who just jumped out of the sky. They make it look like he's this doddering old man. You turn on Fox News every night, that's what you get. Sean Hannity, devotes an hour to trash talking Biden. If I said Donald Trump before, I was mistaken, Meanwhile, their guy's snorting Adderall, can't remember what anything is, can't remember his own grandkids' names. And that was the case in 2016. That's why I broke my NDA, because he's an awful person. He's a sexual predator. He's an active addict. And if you can do the gig, I don't care how much drugs you do. But if you're in active addiction, as I always say, it means you're only going to be thinking about yourself. And that's the last thing you want in a leader. And that's what we got in Donald Trump, as you see every day. If you look back at the evidence of his administration, I mean, it says so much about our country that he's tied at this point, or ahead if you believe certain polls, that he's still in the running, that it wasn't beyond the pale even for the Republicans, what he did on January 6th. The fact that he was able to rehab his image to the point that he's the front runner again shows you, what a chasm we have in our society. And it's not between right and left. It's between dark and light, between ignorance and knowledge. And they want to keep their followers ignorant. And they have the perfect combination of things to do that. The guns, the pickup trucks, the LGBTQ stuff. What do you care? You know, we're in Pride Month. What do you care if somebody's gay? Somebody you love is gay, I promise you. If you don't know about it, it's because they don't love you back enough to tell you the truth about who they are. There's no shame in that. It's such an antiquated kind of BS thing, but they keep pulling it up because, you know, the Southern Christian men like to use that, right? That's a big weapon for them because a lot of those guys don't admit who they are and they feel shame about it because they grow up in communities that make fun of people for being different when it's not even different. It's just freaking normal and banal if you've grown up around it. People are just people. They want to love each other. They want to take care of their families. They want a decent place to live and some food to eat and maybe go to the beach for a week every year. You know what I mean? People aren't looking for a lot. They're looking for peace and equality and an opportunity to move ahead in this life. If you see talent in your child and that child can't get an opportunity to grow that talent, that doesn't just affect that parent and that family. That affects all of us because it's taking away the richness of us as a nation. It's taking away potential, you know, progress. And we have myriad problems right now. We need all hands on deck, intellectually, artistically, spiritually, physically. There's so many gifts. You know, the answer is in us, but we have to learn to see it. We have to draw it out. And a lot of people are failing that challenge now because they're have an avalanche of ignorance falling on them day and night. And they have all this sort of stuff that's engineered in labs in Silicon Valley, you know, designed to keep your attention. So somebody who's not that bright to begin with hops on YouTube and goes down some rabbit hole of QTubers and patriots and all this BS, you know, and it attaches to something fundamental inside of them where they already have a grievance and a resentment because they don't understand why the town they're living in, half the factories are rusted out and grandma's smoking a meth pipe on the back porch, you know, and nothing good comes their way. I get it. I get that frustration, but it's because you got sold out by Ronald Reagan, the last guy who was waving a flag in your face and telling you to hate the other, telling you that your problem was, you know, a welfare queen, quote unquote, in Detroit. No, it wasn't. Your problem was Michael Milken, but you didn't see it. And Carl Icahn and all these other corporate raiders that as soon as Reagan deregulated Wall Street, LBOs were the rule, leveraged buyout. And these guys were taking cheap money, buying companies and selling them for parts and sending your jobs to Asia. And you didn't know what hit you. And then Big Pharma came in and pumped your communities, you know, and your broken bodies full of poison that they knew was addicted. And they knew you'd do anything to get another bottle of, you know, OxyContin. And that's what happened to those communities. And then the Republicans, you know, that are great at vertical integration decide, well, let's back the prison industrial complex because then we could just lock all these people up and that'll bring jobs to our community and I'll run on that. And then that's what happens. And then you're caught in this cycle of despair. And if you don't have people that are willing to come into that community and tell you the hard truth about why you're there, you fall for the, you know, the con man, the grifter, the guy who comes through and says, your problem is this other guy, and I'm going to return you to glory. And we're going to take that other guy's stuff and we're going to put him on a train and then we're going to live in a glorious future where everybody looks just like us. And that never happens. It's the dream of fools and Nazis and fascists and all these kind of folks that are, you know, rearing their heads all over the globe again, right? It's all over Europe. We know what's been happening in France. They're going to have an emergency election, you know, referendum, because so many people voted for the far-right candidate whose grandfather was a freaking Nazi, you know, who was sympathetic to the Nazis when they, you know, kidnapped France and the rest of Europe for 4 years until we had to rush onto the beaches with the Europe, you know, with the English and the Canadians and everybody in the English Empire, Australians, all kinds of people pitched in and sacrificed and stormed Omaha Beach 80 years ago, you know, a week ago. You know, are we honoring those memories by flirting with fascism, by even giving the time of day to somebody who tried to overthrow an election and to all these spineless men that helped him get away with it and are trying to do the same thing again so a Josh Hawley can sit on the Supreme Court? You know, because that's what will happen. Thomas and Alito will retire on day 2 of a new Trump administration, and they'll ride off to the sunset in their Prevost tour buses, and their private planes, laughing all the way, and they'll put Eileen Cannon on the court, or Josh Hawley, or any of these other scumbags, somebody young who could potentially be on there for 40 years, taking away your Social Security, taking away your Medicaid, taking away your, citizens with disability rights, and all these things that you need. Every time you see a regulation in something, it's because somebody died. People don't just pass like laws out of the blue, out of pure foresight, right? Washington's way too busy for that. Things get passed because somebody went to lobby their congressman or their senator and say, here's a picture of my son or daughter, and they died because of this, and I think we need a law to make sure it doesn't happen again. Help me honor their memory by doing this. That's how we get stuff like that done. By hard work and sacrifice and people given the ultimate, just like on the beaches of Normandy. People have done that in this country that you don't know, that are heroes. They were attacking Fauci, right? Fauci listened to ACT UP, who had to lobby him in the 80s, in early 90s, and say, you're doing this wrong. You need to work with us because our friends and our lovers are dying, and we need an answer. You need to lift these waiting 5 years to do clinical trials on medicine. Give us the medicine. We're going to die anyway. Let us at least see if it helps. And boom, you get AZT. You get all these things that move things forward because guys sacrificed. They showed up. And women. I don't mean just guys. It's, they showed up. I was in D.C. in those years. I knew people who were lost in this. I remember seeing the AIDS quilt on the mall. You cry walking around, I saw that generation. That's my mom's generation. I grew up around those guys. And, AIDS hit when I was in 6th grade. I was in the middle of that whole pandemic. And it was awful. And we still have fallout. How many times you watch something now about some brilliant guy, on Broadway or whatever, and the career was cut short because Republicans didn't want to deal with it. Ronald Reagan wanted to pretend it wasn't there because he didn't care about that demographic, and he thought it would hurt him with his supporters to be empathetic towards somebody in the gay community because he was an asshole. He was a racist from the beginning. He was a B-level actor who rose to political power in the late 60s in California as a friend of the NRA, as a conservative, old school, make America great again candidate. That was his tagline in the 80s. Trump stole it like he steals everything else, Same ignorance, different year, different branding, same thing. So those regulations, they came in spite of a certain part of our government. And that part is never been stronger. There's never been something like how they drug Dr. Fauci and dragged him, whatever the proper term is, in front of Congress last week and berated him. Marjorie Taylor Greene telling him he should be in jail. Who is that, ignorant, troll to be even addressing him? Fauci went to Regis High School in New York City. It's a smart Jesuit school that you get in there on merit, okay? It's not something where your parents just had a bunch of money. You have to be pretty smart. He was captain of the basketball team, and he's 5'6", and as a short guy, big props, He's a hero, He helped us get through 2020. If we didn't have that vaccine, we would have lost a million other people, And we wouldn't have gone back to normal, the concerts and going to the mall and all this stuff. The fact that he's getting punished, that the judge is getting punished, that anybody who stands up to Trump gets punished, and that's become precedent is what you don't want to get numb to. Because if they do get reelected, Project 2025 will make that law. And your friends and neighbors who you even think are probably cool will become cowards, and they'll go along with the party line because that's what people always do. Not everybody. There'll be a resistance, but people get quiet real quick. They worry about their own interests, especially people that aren't accustomed to that sort of thing because we've been sort of rolling along asleep, thinking we're the greatest democracy in the world and this could never happen to us. It happens to a lot of places. Empires fall and they crumble, and they do so because they get infected and rusted from within, and Trump and Putin who's manipulating Trump, they use Americans' greed against them, like jujitsu. And that's what Trump does. He appeals to people's greed. That's what the infrastructure is in the right wing, because they're making money off it. I saw a clip of Kimberly Guilfoyle on her podcast interviewing Russ Vought, who's the architect of Project 2025. I wrote a Substack about it recently. If you don't subscribe to Noel's Notes on Substack, that's like the gist of what I do these days. So please check it out. But I wrote about that guy. He's from Trumbull, Connecticut, which tells you all you need to know about him. To begin with, But, these guys want to take over the country. They're mean, spirited, mediocre white men, and they see a godhead in Trump. They see the idiot whisperer, and they know they can do anything they want on his coattails. And a lot of these guys want to do really bad things. Anybody who starts talking about rounding people up and deporting them, and the leader that they're making that talk for addresses other Americans as vermin, that's bad news. That's not what we fought for in foreign wars. That's not what we're immune of in our own racist past that most people don't want to look at. And it's not really as much of the past as we'd like to think it is, when we do live in comfort and privilege. There's a lot of work to be done, and Trump is stealing that progress from us, and they want to make it reality forever. Everything serves Trump, and he hands it off to Don Jr., and Ivanka and Jared. And it'll be too late to do anything about it. The good news is now it's not too late, but we got to focus on the right thing. And we have to understand what we're up against. Social media and all this stuff is a comfortable way to spend some time, but they could turn it off in a minute. I'm very nervous about Twitter around the election because Elon's already showed himself to be in cahoots with Trump. He got on his private jet and flew to Mar-a-Lago to kiss Trump's ass, or to Palm Beach, He took down those, emails I talked about with Ted Cruz. He's doing all he can to manipulate Twitter and to make people feel like they have a voice, but really he can turn it off in a minute. And that scares me because we've already seen the outsized role that social media played in the 2016 election. By 2020, it got away from him because we were locked down. Everybody was on Twitter. There was this sort of burgeoning left influencer group that seemed very organic and helpful at the time, and has since moved into, kind of money-making operations where people aren't making as many videos. It's more like, watch my YouTube stuff, because there's money involved now, and that changes everything. This is not altruism, a lot of what you see in political, discourse. It's about people trying to build their own brands, and that's greed. That's, once again, something that can be used against you. Yeah, let them keep talking. Let them thinking they're making a difference, and then I'll turn it off 3 weeks before the election, And then what are they going to do? And then Trump seizes power because he's going to say that he won that night, and he's going to say it early, and there's going to be some stuff happening. And I don't know exactly what that is, but I know Flynn and those guys are working for it now. And that's what I wrote about on my Substack when I saw these guys training in Florida. They're probably doing that all over the country, or at least in enough key areas that they can create some sort of false flag, chaos kind of thing. I don't want to use false flag because that's a term of the right, but you know what I mean? There'll be some crazy thing that pops off, and they'll try to blame it on Antifa or the Democrats, and they'll say, we got to lock it down. They're trying to steal the election. Take to the streets, great patriots, And then everybody in your neighborhood who's a Trump guy is going to be out in their giant pickup trucks, with their flags and their guns, and he's going to declare martial law, whatever he's going to try to do. It's going to be nutty. It's going to be 10 times worse than January 6th because there's no safeguards. He's not being held accountable for that. He's corrupted the judge in Florida, Aileen Cannon, enough that she stalled his case. The Supreme Court did him the ultimate favor by still dragging it out. Their decision still hasn't been delivered. They could have not heard the case back in February when it had already been cert, or whatever the proper legal term is in D.C. in the district. It was already fine. There was no reason they had to get involved. They did. And then they said, but we won't tell you our answer until the end of June. So you can expect that either on Thursday, Friday, or next week, So he's not getting held, accountable for what he did on January 6th. What's to keep him from doing it again? The guys who helped him have all been pardoned and they're out of jail, except for Bannon, who's going to serve 4 months, and Danbury, which isn't far from me, and it's next to Trumbull, so his buddy Patrick Vogt can come and see him. Danbury's also where Trump, his helicopter pilot got sent after he got busted flying a bunch of kilos up to Ohio, and then they somehow miraculously moved his trial to Trump's sister's courtroom in North Jersey, Marianne Barry Trump, or Trump Barry, and she recused because her husband had also been on cocaine airlines, but she picked the guy who heard the case, and he read a letter aloud that Trump had written in court about what a great guy Joseph Weichelbaum was, his helicopter pilot, who had been smuggling cocaine to Ohio and North Carolina and all these places. And the guy got a slap on the wrist. He got 4 months or 13 months in Danbury, which in the 80s for drug trafficking was a slap on the wrist. We were sending black guys 3 strikes, you're out to prison, for a bag of fucking pot. Okay, let alone crack and stuff. And this guy's got kilos. But that's how the CIA was making money. So, it was a different, thing. And then he got out of prison and he bought a condo in Trump Tower and he went back into business, right? Because Trump said, I got you, dude. Don't spill the beans on me and I'll take care of you. And that's what he did. And that's what he's doing now, right? There was a story recently how like a lot of the witnesses who work for him who've been subpoenaed have all gotten raises, and they've all gotten these bonuses and these perks because he wants them to play nice, be a good warrior, and I'll take care of you. Peter Navarro sitting in prison down in Miami. That's the way it works. He's not a wannabe mob boss. He's a mob boss. He knows how it works. It's thugs. There's guys who keep their mouth shut and they get rewarded. You don't keep your mouth shut, you testify, we harass you. We come after your family. We make your life hell. And that's what they're doing now. That's what we see over and over. They're attacking these juries and judges, And it's, sadly just a matter of time until somebody gets hurt. We've already seen during his administration, judges attacked, FBI agents targeted. It's disgusting, and it should disgust any American who believes in the rule of law and democracy and has the courage to stand up to your fellow Americans. Now's the time. You got to confront people on this, not in a violent way that's going to get you shot, but if it's your family member, if it's somebody who said some BS at the table, don't ignore it and let's all get along. Say, what are you thinking? You want grandma to go without, Medicaid? Medicare? You want to not have a facility to send people that's funded by the government that like helps them when they need help in rehabilitation in all kinds of ways? You want it just every man for himself and these giant companies have all the money and corporations and billionaires and you're going to fight each other, for the scraps? Because that's what they want. And that's what you're signing up for if you vote for this guy again. We're screwed. And people love to wave the flag and talk about the vets and their family and we love our troops. Then do something. Protect democracy because this is your chance. And you're not going to get another one. People don't like Biden. They got problems with, things he's done. I get it. Obviously, Netanyahu's a horrible person who's completely taken the grace and generosity of President Biden and our administration standing with our ally and abused it, and he's pissing off the entire world because people are outraged, because he's clearly got no objective other than, his own ability to stay in power. And he's willing to do anything to accomplish that. And that should be a reminder, of what Trump will be like. I get you're pissed at Biden, but if you think Donald Trump is going to be better for Gaza, you're out of your freaking mind. First of all, he's going to come out there to Michigan and round everybody up in Dearborn and send you out of here. They're drooling for the opportunity to do that. Listen to Stephen Miller. Listen to these guys. Go on their podcast and listen to what they're saying. I do. Don't fall for hearsay or fall for the trending thing you see on TikTok. Be outraged. It's horrible what's happening in this world. There's way too much suffering. There is all kinds of calamity popping off. But putting that moron and that chaos agent back into office is not going to make it better. So say what you want about Biden. He's been in D.C. for 50 years. If he's been a criminal, if he's part of the Biden crime family, why are they just figuring it out now? Right? Why did it never come up for the decades that he served alongside, with people on both sides of the aisle? You know, you don't think Obama would have figured that out when he was vetting them, you know? So it's all insanity, but it's designed to give talking points to the uneducated and the uninformed. And I see it all the time in these undecided voter things they do on CNN, where people are clearly ignorant and clearly, you know, repeating things they heard on a podcast or a TikTok, and they want to sound smart in the moment because somebody's got a microphone in their face. So they're like, I don't like Biden on the inflation. You know, prices are higher under him. The Inflation Reduction Act was a miracle for our economy, you know, and he made sure that it would be equitable, right? That all the states that were getting these projects, infrastructure for example, would have to hire, you know, minorities and all kinds of other special interest groups that might get looked over in the way business had been done in the past, the status quo. You know, he knew guys that were going to come from districts, take the money and run and punish, you know, the same people they'd always been punishing them. And he baked it in that it wouldn't go down that way. And it's lifting our economy up. We're not out of the woods. We had a complete global supply chain lockdown in 2020. That's going to affect prices, you know, but to repeat it like he's bad for the economy. Biden's great at the economy. If you don't understand what happened during Obama's time, Obama inherited the financial collapse of 2007, right? When the real estate market, you know, cratered out because all these guys were given loans that people had no, you know, mortgages, the housing crisis, right? These Wall Street firms were given mortgages to people that had no ability to pay these mortgages, and they very quickly became underwater, and all these developments were just empty overnight. And, you know, Shearson Lehman Brothers and all these, you know, giant brokerage houses folded overnight, you know. That's what Biden inherited. That's what, rather, Obama inherited. And part of the reason he picked Biden, because he put Biden in charge of that recovery. And it worked, but it takes a while to kick in. So a lot of those metrics came due under Trump's administration. So Trump was benefiting from things Biden had done as a vice president, taking credit for it now. And now they're shifting the stuff that was Trump's fault onto Biden, you know, which for me, from my personality, I'd be like, fuck all of y'all. I'm out of here. Like, I can't take it anymore. But he takes it and still shows up to work. You know, he's I don't know the word, you know. It's too hot to think of the word. It starts with a P, you know. But he's, you know, he was the man for the moment. Yeah, in a perfect world, would he be 40 years younger? He would, but he's not. And right now, he's the only choice you got, you know. And the whole thing of, like, I see a lot of young people trending like, well, this lesser of two evils, Biden's not evil. You know, you're calling him Genocide Joe. You're talking out of your ass. I understand your feelings about what's happening, but any American president would have supported Israel after October 7th. You know, people don't even take into consideration the strategic interests that the U.S. has in Israel. Do we need a two-state solution? Absolutely. Do we need to stop bombs falling on women and children? Absolutely. You know, should we get the fuck out of the West Bank and all these other, like, far-right crazy stuff that Israel's doing? Of course we should, you know. But attacking the Democrats who've been working on those issues for decades and rewarding Trump for this is suicide, okay? It's suicide as a democracy, you know. And I worry that the fervor for that will overshadow, you know, the stakes of this election, and combined with Biden's 38% approval rating and the onslaught of right-wing messaging, you know, we could be in for a real rude awakening in November, and that's not going to be fun for anybody. So, you know, as hot as it is, I'm going to keep ranting about this stuff. You guys don't really probably even need to hear it at this point. Everybody's got, you know, all kinds of feelings, and I get it. But we're in trouble, and we have to find a way to come together, you know. And you're better off with somebody who's willing to learn and listen than somebody who's going to say, it's my way or the highway. And as a matter of fact, I own the highway now, too, so get the F out, because that's what Trump's going to do, okay? So enough is enough on that kind of stuff. Did anybody see the Tony Awards? You know, I saw it. It was great. I worked on the Tony Awards for 20 years. I love that show. It always brings a tear to my eye. Alicia Keys always makes me cry. I've done so many shows with her. The first show I ever did with her, she was filling in for Aaliyah, who passed away tragically in a plane crash in the Bahamas, and she was set to perform on this VMAs. We were doing it at Lincoln Center, and she died like, a day or two before the rehearsal. Like, it was just happened. We were in production. And Alicia Keys had sort of been a protege of Clive Davis, and somebody's like, call up this Alicia Keys girl, And nobody had heard of her. She was like 16 or something. And she came and performed and was incredible, And I remember watching her in that moment thinking like, man, this is a big moment to rise to. This was back when people watched the VMAs. They were still a big deal. And she killed it, And I've done all-star games with her and all this kind of stuff over the years and little corporate benefits. It'll be like a polo match on Governor's Island or something, and she'll be, picking up a check and playing 3 songs where most people would phone it in, and you always feel it. There's something about her. So that was a great opening. I liked that it was designed sort of for a younger audience, and that it like sort of celebrated and inspired people towards Broadway and the performing arts, because, it's so important. And that one guy who won for Stereophonic, which I'm hoping to see, I will see, my kind of thing. He talked about like the arts are a hallmark of a civilized society, right? They're important. Back to Reagan, he's the one who defunded them. They attacked that because of everything I just said in the previous hour, right? They want people dumb and easily manipulatable and numb to their own humanity. And when you sit in the dark with other human beings and you watch somebody do something beautiful on a stage that touches those things that you may be afraid to feel in your day-to-day life because you're trying to keep it together for your family or whatever, but you get a chance to sit and be like, I feel that way too, man. That really addresses my heartbreak and my longing and my hopes and my struggle or whatever, And hell, it makes me understand what that guy's going through too. That is healing. That builds bonds between people. That strengthens you as a society. And it's beautiful too. Forget about the therapeutic, beneficial events. It's the height of achievement, anything in the performing arts, I'm not picking favorites, but, musical theater, things that involve dance and singing and acting and books and an orchestra in the pit that you're not even seeing that's playing it perfectly, every night of the week, twice on Wednesdays, it's a miracle. The stagehands, there's so much that goes on into a Broadway show. I wish, my listeners are probably pretty familiar with that, but I wish you could just take a tour of backstage, because you always think, well, it's the chorus line and it's the lead actors and these people running around in makeup and maybe a stage manager, some school marm sitting there. You go back there, it's a bunch of Teamsters, guys with ass cracks hanging out, ready to excellently lift and move those sets and stuff. It's, it's America. It's what we are, a diverse group of people that when we work together in concert with each other, we achieve something that's more beautiful than our individual selves, that can inspire not just the world, but future generations, that can create art that's so breathtaking and so, ecstatic and wonderful that it makes people sing, and understand themselves and their own history better. I remember the night Hamilton won. We were doing it we'd been out of Radio City. We were doing it at the Beacon Theater, and I remember seeing those guys win. And what a rush that was, just to be in the presence in that little hallway next to the alley next to the Beacon Theater was like our dressing room, and seeing them all embrace each other and stuff, is a miracle, It's a miracle because it's equitable, right? As hard as it is to break into Broadway, other voices continually come in and say, this is my story. Listen to it, And at first, if there's resistance, ultimately something breaks through. And everybody goes, of course, this is wonderful. This is who we are. Get on the bandwagon, get on board. This train, like the Springsteen song is an old spiritual, but, this train carries saints and sinners. This train carries losers and winners. There's something about the inclusiveness, of art that can carry us forward that can't be lost, especially in this moment, because we need it most. We need it to bolster us, and we need it to inspire us, and we need it to move us forward, because this is not a moment we want to get stuck in. This is certainly not a moment we want to go backwards in. Backwards is death, right? We're standing on a cliff. We barely survived the Trump years. He was burning the Capitol and ready to, take it all to hell. And you know, by dumb luck, they couldn't find Mike Pence, and he knew not to get in his SUV, and it would have been all over. And he knew not to get in there because he knew they would have killed him and said he had a heart attack in the car and Trump was in charge now or something, But he knew he wasn't getting in that limo, to his credit, So, when somebody puts out your house, when it's on fire, you don't go out and buy more matches, you rethink, what you're doing. And that's what we need to do. And the arts and stuff can help us do that. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the Tonys and all my friends that worked on it. The same people I started doing it with. My first one was probably around 97 when I got out of drama school. They're still doing it, all my friends and colleagues, and now they're like the producers, some of them and stuff. So amazing job, Enjoy your summer. Stay cool in the heat. It's hot out there, Stay safe. Thanks for all the support. I'm going to put a commercial-free version of this on my Patron, Noel Casler Comedy at Patreon. I set up a Patreon. I think I'm saying it right. So thank you to those guys who signed up. You can listen to this commercial free on there. If you watch it on YouTube, I guess you hit the like button, or you can subscribe and become a member. Sign up for the Substack, that fictitious stuff I write about MAGA, which has been very popular kind of on Twitter. I started putting those on my Substack. Chapter 1 and 2 have come out, and people have enjoyed those. So thanks for reading, and that's an easy way to support. And all the content is free as always, but your support keeps me going here. So, that's about it. I'll be on the Stephanie Miller Show next Thursday. It's the same day as the debate if Trump shows up. I don't think he's going to show up, guys, but they call me Nostradamus for a reason. I'm not wrong often. I could be wrong this time. It would be hard to see him showing up, but who knows? He may show up. It's going to be interesting either way. So I'll be on that show next Thursday. I'll do another episode. I'm heading out to Sag Harbor next week, but I'll give you another episode soon. I know it's been a while. Thanks for listening to the songs and the music, and I don't know why I'm opening the shows with those now, but thanks for listening. As always, you guys are good. Stay cool. Take care of yourselves. I love you. Peace.